Giants TV. I'm Nick Smith. Have you ever wondered how to escape from Narcatraz? We've got a great show for you. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. We are back live from the mountains of Utah, Oakley, Utah, all the way to South Africa. We've got an amazing guest for you today. Today's host, Ryan Morris, the incredible Ryan the Lion, is going to guide us through everything. And so, man, if you these are live. This is the cool thing about this is we are live. So if the signal cuts out, we're just going to roll with it, right?
Or Adrian's power.
Yeah, or Adrian's power.
I've got some tech here, so we've got the tech
it
to
could
stop
happen.
that.
Ready.
Well, if you're not a member of the Tribe of Giants, make sure you go join us there because we got some great gifts for you and a great community. So we're 4,300 members worldwide. And as you join the Tribe of Giants, we have a gift for you, Stretch Revolution. And that's the 12-week journey of the 12 journeys. So you get to self-study and get all of the content that we created for that program for free. So it's, we spent thousands of dollars creating that program for you. So make sure you take advantage. Adrian, you've been through that program.
Yes, I have. It's fantastic. I mean, for my own journey, it has meant so much, and for the work, with escapees from Narcatraz, it has also helped a lot, to understand what is happening from all the different perspectives. It's fantastic to have that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
it's an awesome thing. Everybody should do it. Yeah,
I love it. That was a shameless plug. I like it. Well, Ryan, do you want to introduce our guest?
I do. Here in the U.S. and Canada this weekend, it's been Canada Day and the 4th of July weekend. So it's been a busy holiday weekend for at least a continent-ish of people. So happy Canada Day for those of you who are in Canada, and 4th of July in the U.S. Let me read about Adriann Meyer, who is in South Africa. Adriann is an explorer of consciousness. His mission on Earth is to use spiritual intelligence to help people discover who they are and to live awake and unafraid in a world of fear, greed, and indoctrination. He has been endowed with the gifts of the Spirit. He uses these to guide people to discovering their own original identity and then to live powerfully, peacefully, and joyful in this world by being in the world, but not of the world. He continually studies cutting edge psychology, original theology, and science of the mind to bring the work into the unfolding world. The current project is to lead people out of the mental prison of narcissism and reinvent themselves to take their place at the creative edge of humanity. He has taken the hard road of discovery in many ways, but then Columbus didn't fly to America. His search for truth takes him into places where there isn't any to be light, and walks people on their journey back to self. Adrian's own experience as an inhabitant of Narcatraz had given him insight and understanding to help Narcatrazians to take the fast track journey of transformation, escape from Narcatraz, and live. Adrian's greatest desire is for more people to wake up and live in the divine peace from where creating anything is possible. He helps people consciously create a world that blesses everyone with their consciousness, business, and practices. Sorry about that. He has served in large corporate business and began the Conscious Entrepreneur Incubator in 2018. He is a coach, mentor, writer, teacher, and conscious business consultant. And he's pretty dang funny too. The dude's amazing.
He is pretty funny.
Yeah, he's gonna send me a thing of Skippy peanut butter because I went to the shelves the other day and there was no peanut butter. I thought the sky was falling, the world is ending, but I'm gonna create it so that my world, Adrian, that peanut butter comes back. Have to have peanut butter.
Yeah, for sure. Let's consciously create that one.
So we're doing it. Welcome to the show, Adriann. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Nick.
You're welcome,
awesome
Ryan.
being here.
I'm looking at your shirt there.
Oh,
Did you just get a new shirt?
I got my latest and greatest "Love You Too" shirt. It's just
a little less
swag.
faded. Yeah.
Yeah. My other ones, I repped the heck out of us.
You like so many people that the labeling fell off.
Yeah,
Like, that's amazing.
I have a shirt, Adriann, that says "Free hugs. I am a giant," and it was like disintegrating.
Worn out, huh?
Yeah,
for sure.
Happens. Yeah.
I want one of those.
Oh, hey, we can get you that. You can get lots of hugs in South Africa. I'm sure they're giant huggers there too. Let's Nick, you maybe guide us here, but usually we like to go way back and in their story, kind of give people an idea. You tell us where we're going, Nick.
Well, I want to dive into, just because of the uniqueness of Adriann's story, I want to stay on the track of Narcatraz, this whole concept, and go into the journeys. I want to go through the journeys on that experience and that creation, because there was a point that didn't exist. And there was a point that you were living your life somewhat unconsciously, like maybe stuck in routines and patterns that you weren't aware of and weren't even awake to. And so I kind of want to go back to that when you woke up from that, when you had an experiencing of, oh crap, I'm in Narcatraz. Do you know where that point is? And can you speak to that?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, there are 2 points on this one. The first one was when I was working in corporates and so on, and I realized that there was something going on, and I, of course, narcissism, I didn't even know it was a thing. But what my experience was is all the classic things like the gaslighting and the future faking, all those things started coming out, and I understood, but this is not what I wanted to do. So I got out of corporate, and then I started discovering the whole consciousness work. And then to understand that narcissism is a state of consciousness. It is a level of consciousness. If you go to David Hawkins' work, then he talks about the levels of consciousness. And then I saw it, but there's the bottom half, which is the life diminishing, consciousness. And basically what it means is like it contracts everything around you, and narcissism lives there. The whole idea of narcissism that lives in that levels of consciousness. And then it makes it very interesting to understand, to say, okay, how was I living there? And then I got out of that in a way, understanding and start living in that. And then I got myself into a relationship where that happened again. And then, but the thing is, it's like going into this unconsciously and not thinking that it happens in corporates and in business and so on, but not in a personal relationship situation. And then I understood that, when you work in a corporate or in a business that is driven by narcs, sorry, I just use the word narcs, it's easier. Then basically it's easier to work there because you know what they want and you give it to them. They want numbers, they want figures, makes them look well, and they achieve. Then you go home and you're not in there anymore. But then you transition into a personal relationship where you 24/7 with a person, and then that thing starts coming out. And you don't go anywhere. You can't go back to work to get that because you're in this 24/7. And then it starts affecting your life. And then you actually start going unconscious, even more unconscious with this kind of thing, because it is a slow process of like some of the experts say, they colonize your identity. And as your identity starts disappearing, then you start going more and more unconscious, and you just realize that you start suffering more and more, and you don't know why. You don't understand why. It's because you're becoming more and more unconscious, and you disconnect from your heart. And as that happens, then you actually get sick. I got severely ill at the time, and I didn't understand why. Of course, now I can, like Steve Jobs says, you can connect the dots looking backwards. You can see what happened when and how it showed up, and how my life was affected by that to the degree that I got sick. And as you can see, though, I had 14 operations on my jaw, and at the end, the doctor said to me, "There's nothing wrong with you." And I said, "Okay, so what is wrong?" Something is wrong. And then he said, "It's because you're not speaking." And I thought, "What?" And he says, "Yeah, your jaw is backing up because you can't speak." And from there, I started realizing about 2014, around there, I stood back and thought, okay, but then there's something else wrong here. And other things that happen, some of the future faking and the constant, not constant, but the frequent diminishing and gaslighting and things like that, it started showing up more and more. And then I could see, the moment I became conscious of that, the jaw problem disappeared and I was fine.
Yeah.
So the biology was affected by the energy, and the consciousness. And it was hectic, to in the end to wake up to this and then start rediscovering yourself in a way, so that you can, okay, so who was I before this? So that I can go back there, because that person was powerful. That person was something that is not now, and that person used to show up in amazing ways. Who was that person? I need to go back to find that person. That was the process in the last couple of years now, where I basically had to go rediscover myself.
I think about the automations that occur. As you were describing the level of going unconscious, I pictured Austin Powers, where the guy's standing in front of the steamroller, and he's like, "No!"
It's like
right?
100
and it's
yards
just all
ahead.
slow-mo. Yeah. And it's like you think you're okay. It's just a relationship. I can handle this. And then slowly it gets closer and closer until you lose yourself completely. And I would imagine, I'm up in the mountains right now. You get in the water and sometimes you get a leech on your leg, right? You'd see it and you'd rip it off. You wouldn't just let it sit there, or a tick or anything like that. Yeah. And the sooner you can get it off of your skin, the quicker you can move on. But if you're unconscious to it, then it'll slowly take over you, where you really think there's something wrong with you, right? And then over time, you start to assimilate to that person's way of being, or what they think you should be. So you lose your identity. And then I would imagine, coming out of it, when you become conscious that happened, I would imagine a lot of people feel a lot of shame about themselves. They self-judge. They're really critical about what just happened, not putting any of that credit back where it belongs. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And the guilt and the shame that you feel when I'm this awake person, and I know how all these things work and so on, and yet I got back into that, and the shame for sure, and the guilt. How could I let this happen? Many of the people that I'm working with now, they have exactly the same thing. They say, "But I shouldn't be here," but you are there.
Yeah,
and that's the crazy making thing, where you're like, "But I shouldn't be here, but I am here. So how did I get in there?" And then understanding that your identity was wiped out. You actually systematically, your identity was replaced with an identity that was manipulatable, or more manipulatable. So that's amazing to afterwards. Of course, it's amazing to realize, okay, this is what's happening. This has been happening for so long. Yeah.
And there becomes a thought of, instead of working on yourself, maybe I can change that person. Maybe I can do something where they'll wake up and they won't do this anymore. But that's not our responsibility, right?
No, exactly. Yeah.
But it's easy to go into, especially if you're empathic, to think, you can create some real empathy for this person, but they know that. They know that you can create empathy. And so that's what they're feeding on, is your, in a sense, weakness. And it's not a weakness. It's just your ability to provide space for anything.
Yeah. They talk about narc supply, which is the energy that the narcissist needs to function, basically. And narc supply basically means attention. So when you give them attention, even if it's the kind of attention, so can you tell me what I did wrong so that I can change? and then you don't get an answer. So that's like, even more crazy making.
Yeah.
But you're trying to find out what you should be doing differently. And then if you don't get an answer, you start implementing or improvising. So then you really become stupid. You start doing things like, maybe if I should do this, maybe if I do that. And it doesn't work, because the narcissist by nature is unpleasable. You cannot please them, because they will tell you, if you do this, then I will do that. That's the future faking. It's like, if you just work harder in the business, then we will do this, but it never happens.
And then moving the goalpost, right? They're
constantly,
like when you hit,
Tell me, maybe it would help our viewers too, and anybody that's not aware or conscious of it, but maybe quickly describe a narcissist so that people can have at least a general idea that don't know. Then that will, in this conversation too, they'll start to see and maybe start to become aware of those that they see in their life. And I always worry, am I a narcissist? I don't want to be a narcissist. I'm always worried about, then I start self-judging myself, right? I'm like, but tell me, talk to me quickly about what the narcissist is and what
can you add
do.
to that too, the traits of a narcissist versus being a narcissist? I would imagine most of us have traits that are narcissistic.
Yeah.
But we're not narcissists, right?
Exactly. We are all capable. We are all capable of the most heinous evil. We are all of us can do that. All of us become narcissistic at some stage, when there's enough pressure, when you live when you live in fear, when you begin to when you take pride in a situation, but bad pride, then you really have a problem with where you become narcissistic, you become cruel, and you never allow anybody to say anything to you that is diminishing. You will just drill them into the ground as fast as you can, and we all do that kind of thing. So a narcissist, when they lose, and this might be controversial, when they lose their moral compass and they only live from pride down to humiliation, that's the lowest level of consciousness. When they disconnect from their heart, they have no conscience. They can do whatever they want, and it's cool for them. They will never admit that they're wrong. They do not take responsibility. They, like Amanda Monk was talking about, the weaponized irresponsibility. They make huge mistakes and then expect everybody just to accept that. And if you don't, then they're usually in a power position, either financially or in some way, where they can actually ruin someone's life. And they do that. They have no problem with that.
Can we hang on that? But before you move on, the weaponized irresponsibility. Amanda Monk, I remember when she coined that phrase. It's exactly what's going on. Not only are they irresponsible, but they're using it as a weapon to hurt others.
Exactly.
That's beyond irresponsibility. I mean, now you're hurting with it.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Powerful.
Yeah, and Sam Vaknin he's an expert on this, because he's one himself. He admits that he is one, and he's been diagnosed as one. And he says they have no feeling. They have absolutely no feeling, and they will step on your head if they can. And he says it's not that they don't want to feel; they just don't feel.
That's so because that answers my question, though, because I have all the feels.
Yeah, you see,
I feel everything.
Exactly. I mean, feeling guilt and feeling shame and all that kind of stuff, that makes you normal in a sense. That shows you, okay, you're not a narc. Sorry, you're fine. Go ahead and feel guilty. It's cool. You still have a conscience, and it drives you nuts when you can see people doing this kind of thing, and it's like, whoa, man. Who is this person that can actually be this cruel?
Yeah.
And do this to other people? And I mean, I've seen it in business. I've seen it in I had a boss once who said, he said to me, I'm a narcissist. So whatever goes right in the business, I will claim. Whatever goes wrong in the business is your fault. I'm going to pay you a very good salary. but you're going to take the shit. That was his words. And he said, I'm a narc. He's all very rich and so on. So I lasted about 2 years there. I said, okay, fine, dude. I gave you your money. I fixed your business. We sorted everything out. But now it's time for me to go. And he said, no, it's fine.
Okay, so there are two versions of narcissism. There's the overt, that's just clear. They brag like that guy did. And then there's the covert, that on the surface, they seem like the nicest people. They're giving, they're doing things in the community, they're religious leaders. And then underneath it, you start to see their real motives, right? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes. It's also called the vulnerable narcissist. That's someone who's on the surface very shiny and nice and, a beautiful, awesome human being. But when you get to know them for real, then you realize, oh my goodness, that is the most dangerous human being that you can be with, because they switch. They can actually switch like their personality. It's almost like a split personality thing. Not going there in that, but they can switch from this awesome human being to this monster, and they do that without a problem. But they will always be the vulnerable, nice person until such time as they can establish control over you and control your mind. Then they switch, and then it's over. Then it's game over for you.
Give me the chills.
No, and it's real. I mean, it's real. I've worked with several people already that it's like like Amanda said, it's a flip of a switch, and suddenly you're in the company of a totally different human being.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, who are you now? Who is this person? And they will, the words that they use and the stuff that they say to you is like, I thought you loved me, kind of thing. And then you'll hear stuff like, you're nothing of mine. You might as well just F off. It's like, what? This comes after years of being in such a relationship. Or, or hearing a conversation where it's, he's a man, let him suffer.
Yeah.
It's like, and the thing is with the internet and with the social media, they can project that very nice image to the world, and nobody will ever know the other part of them. So only when you get close to them, and when you allow them to invade or annex your identity, then they switch. But to the world, it's an awesome human being. They don't know this other person, and that is what makes it so difficult when people come out, when people leave that relationship, and then all the friends say, "But what's wrong with you? Why did you leave?" It says, "But you don't know this person," and then you try and tell them, and this all over the place that I've seen this where people say, "But that's not the person that we know." It says, exactly. You don't know that person. You know the shiny one, the vivacious, the shiny, the smiley, the rich, the whatever. But there's a different one that the rest of us know. And that person is dangerous. They will, in the words of Sam Wagner, they will kill you if they can.
Man. So
that's how bad it can get.
What's the distinction then? Because I know, like going through a divorce, I didn't get divorced because I'm the sweetest man in the world, right? Like there's some stuff that happened there.
He's pretty sweet though.
But the difference between, okay, so like codependency and narcissism, they're the same coin, is my understanding, just different sides of the same coin. So how do you distinguish between codependent behaviors and narcissistic behaviors? Like how do you really clarify which one is, because they're both damaging, right? And how do you know that you're dealing with traits of narcissism versus the narcissist? And how do you know if you're dealing with codependency versus narcissism? Does that make sense?
This is all part of awareness too, right? We need to be aware and start seeing what's going on.
Yeah, the awareness is the important thing, because most people are not aware of what's happening. And I mean, when they told me I'm a codependent, I almost went crazy. I said, "Are you insane? I'm not codependent. Me. And then I realized, I am. Yes, I am. And that with the people pleasing and not saying yes when you need to say yes, and that kind of thing, all that the way that we get ourselves into a position where we are invadable. And that is the codependent part, where we want to please, we want to be with someone so that we can be loved, kind of thing. And then when we get into that person, what they do, the typical narc will do, they will reflect what you say to them back to you. So whatever the love you give them, excuse me, let me one step back. The narcissist does not love. They do not have love. So what they do is they learn from you whatever love you give them, or affection, or whatever you give it to them, and then they give it back to you, because they mirror it straight back to you, and then basically you fall in love with yourself, and that's one of the big humiliating things. Most humiliating things is when you realize, oh my goodness, I fell in love with myself. And it's like when you actually arrive at that awareness, and oh my God, this is not the person that I know. I'm just learning about myself. And that makes it difficult. And the people pleasing, that's the most dangerous thing for a codependent.
Yeah.
Because you'll always try to please the narcissist, and you'll never succeed.
And it can't happen.
It can't happen.
There was a comment that was just shared about almost the overuse of the phrase narcissist. Like you have a bad relationship, and then all of a sudden that person is a narcissist, or he's a narc, or she's a narc, and there's a distinction. Like a doctor would diagnose somebody as a narcissist. There's a flippant term. It's like toxic positivity. It's like it becomes very catchy, and we use it. But when a person has remorse for their behaviors and they're willing to look at their involvement and then work to change that, that would not be narcissism. Now, they might have used traits of narcissism in that, but I don't think it's up to us to label people as narcissistic, although we can recognize when it's at play, right? Is that?
Yes.
Is that the understanding?
I think, yes, and like you said, is the ability to change. Is it possible to sit down and talk to this person and say, let's look at this. Yes, I've messed up, but so have you. If you say that to a full-blown narc, they will say, I did nothing wrong.
Yeah,
it's you are the one that's doing all everything wrong, and they will use that against you and say, you know what, you're the one who's messing up. That's the messing with your mind. That's the gaslighting. And say, if I can use an example, it's where you can sit in a discussion with someone, and he or she will say, they will say something, and then afterwards, after saying that, you say, but you just said that. I said, I didn't say that. He says, but you did. You just sat here and you said that. No, I didn't. And that is the gaslighting that drives you insane, because because you don't have an answer for that. So I think a non-narc, a person that might be a bit narcissistic at times, that kind of person can stand back and say, yes, I messed up. If, after a few years already, still not acknowledging that it should have done anything wrong. No, nothing. Refuses. And it's like, really? Can you not see that, it is a 50-50? Yes, I screwed up. I made bad decisions and things like that. But on the other side, I did nothing wrong.
Yeah. And this is all you, right?
It's all you. Yeah.
That would be crazy making.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I would imagine. So when you wake up to your situation, like, this is where I'm at. They say it's really challenging for a narcissist to change, but it is possible for somebody to do their own work and start to work through that and shift from narcissism to another way of behaving. But it takes that personal responsibility. Whether you're waking up from narcissism or narcissistic abuse, I would imagine there's a level of grief for the loss of what you had in mind for this relationship, or between that and what is, And working through grief, a lot of people don't grieve their grief. They don't grieve the loss. And they really are hard on themselves instead. So instead of grieving it, they shame themselves. They beat themselves up. Like they make themselves feel small. And so what would you advise somebody that's maybe grieving their loss of the ideal?
I think if I can just take one step back, the idea of diagnosing a narcissist, you need professionals to actually do that. That can take days to do that kind of thing. So I'm not trying to diagnose anybody, but the thing is, when you wake up and you see, okay, this is now happening, and the grief that comes through that, the biggest thing is actually walking away from the situation, and that's the difficult thing, because you will always limp. You will get out of the situation, and you will come off second best or third best even. So then being able to grieve that, I think that is one of the most difficult things to do, is to be willing and able to grieve that thing, like we've talked before, the things that are not anymore. Be able to go there. Am I making sense?
Yes. Yeah. And the idea of grief, there's some neuroscience on it that talks about time, space, proximity, and how those, when they're interrupted, the mind wants to close the gap on that. So when somebody passes, they're no longer close. We can't access them in a timely manner. They're no longer in our space. And so we have to fill in that void that was created by their loss. And when we anchor into an ideal, when it comes to a relationship or a dream, we can anchor into that so much that it becomes a reality. So when it doesn't get realized, we have that same loss that we would experience, or a similar loss that we would experience to a death. Right. And so there's a having to close the gap or mend the gap that was created by that loss. I was in a relationship that I would term was narcissistic just recently. And I broke it off completely, blocked everything, because that's what I know to do. But it doesn't mean that the emotions aren't still there. There's still like a connection that was created. There's still all this stuff, this healing that has to go on inside of that. Looking at my behaviors inside of that. Like, how did I create that? What was my involvement in that? How did I attract that? What am I doing that's creating this environment? And there's all this questioning that goes on. And what I've learned about that grief experience, that depressive state, is that there's a lot of growth that can come from that, a lot of healing that can come from that. But we tend to numb out to it. We tend to avoid it.
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we do. Also what I've seen on the numbing out, the kind of thing is you create memories of things that you never had. And that is the weirdest thing, that you in the process is you think of stuff as memories, but it never happened. And that is the weirdest thing, because you have this idealized idea of what this relationship was, and it wasn't. So when that goes away, you get to the point of denumbing yourself or waking up and accepting. That is the biggest thing, the accepting thing, that
that can be a hard and heavy thing, because you've thought about all the things that could be and that you wanted, whether it's a loving parent or spouse or friend or whatever, and all the things that could be now are gone. And so that can be heavy. It's like it's like really like somebody has passed, like they've died, and you got to grieve through all of that too.
And it's not easy. It's really not easy, especially if you've been in that relationship for a long time, like 12, 13, 14, 15 years. Then there's a lot of that waking up and just allow it to break open and say, okay, this is what it is. And that hurts.
This is that acceptance phase, right?
It hurts. Yeah.
Well, that's one of the journeys. So as we look at the journeys, the unconsciousness, the waking up, the grief, the acceptance, like, I don't think we spend enough time on the acceptance, because what I hear in a lot of conversations that I have is a resistance to what is. Like, it's not okay that I went through that. It's not okay that I am where I am. I can't reconcile between where I am and where I thought I should be. And if we can really slow down and understand that acceptance is simply, it is what it is. That's
Yeah.
it. Doesn't mean you
That's
love it.
exactly.
Doesn't mean it's
Yeah.
ideal. It just is what it is. There's a lot of growth that can come from that. Can you speak to that?
And yes, and also stop, for me, stop adding so much meaning to whatever that was, because it's illusion, because it's not whatever meaning I add to, you know, the all events and everything that happened. I will make up meanings that is not real. So, you know, because you're in that state of being disidentified with who you really are, you begin to make up meanings, and then it's like, where did this idea come from? You know, because that's not me. And being okay then with the hurt, it's okay. Okay, I'm okay with not being okay. And once you get there and you accept the fact that it isn't okay and you didn't deserve this, and you know, accepting the fact that it's a hectic thing to accept that you were abused for sure, you know, and you didn't deserve this, and then the healing can start. Then the healing can start for me.
Okay, so I have a thought here. When you were raised by a narcissistic parent, let's say, or you're in that relationship and you are the victim of that, but then you become the victim so well that you become the perpetrator of the pain by your victimness. Like, does that make sense? Like, you use your victim stance to now be a perpetrator in somebody else's harm. And there's a level of ownership that has to occur of waking up to, that happened in my life. Maybe you were raised by a narcissistic parent, or you were in that relationship, but at what point do you wake up to your ability, not your responsibility, your ability to recreate your life? Because if you take on, like, I remember my mom telling stories about her childhood and her abuse, and she would continue to be the victim because it paid off. People would donate money. They would come and console her. Like, at what point does she stop telling that story and start recreating it in a different way? You know, and I've seen victims become the perpetrators. Like Amanda Monk said, the hurt people hurt people. Can you speak to that?
You know, yes. You see what happens when you are in, I'll just call it, when you are in Narcatraz, you begin to knock yourself, because you're in that level of consciousness, and in that level of consciousness, that's where it works. That's how it works in the level of humiliation and grief and guilt. That's how it works at that level. So if you look at it as an expression of consciousness, you become a perfect knock to yourself, because you are now telling yourself the same stories, because that's what happened at that consciousness. So then, and also, you will become the narcissist to other people, especially people that you see as below you or smaller than you. And as your little world just gets smaller and smaller, you become more of a tyrant to protect that little world. And so you become severely narcissistic to anybody else. Like the one guy that I know, he's got nothing. He doesn't have a job, and he struggles to make life work for himself. And he was in a narcissistic relationship, and he walked out. And I don't know the whole story, but what I see now, what I've recognized in him, he's now the knock. He was the victim, but now he's the knock. And then that's even worse, because he doesn't have a republic. The big knock, can I say, they have a republic of me. His republic of me is about this big, you see. So he becomes more and more tyrannical about his little republic that he's looking after, and then they estrange themselves totally from life.
Man, what a cycle. I mean, to recognize it, there's really no like slowly peeling the Band-Aid on this. It's a ripping of the Band-Aid. When you end a relationship with a narcissist or somebody that's narcissistic, it can be really hard, because it is a shattering of the world. Because if you try and slow move your way out of it, a lot of times you won't make it out.
You won't make it out. Yeah. Yeah, because what I found is different to the law of attraction. I just call it the law of migration. If you look at the lower level of consciousness, you migrate to those people and you
Right.
become a Narcatrazian. And amongst the Narcatrazian, there's more narcissism there that you can actually believe, because now everybody's in that same consciousness, and
Yeah.
that's just how it works there. So the thing is, yes, like you say, you have to rip off that band-aid, the plaster, and this is what's happening to you, dude. To wake up fast, because you need to get out of here quickly. Otherwise, you're going to end up there and you're going to stay there. And when you stay there, you're as good as dead.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a bit harsh, but that's how it works, because you become totally dysfunctional, and as you just collapse more and more and more. And I know they talk about in trauma counseling about the collapse. As you collapse more and more, there's less of you that can respond. And when there's nothing left to respond, what's left for you?
Man, we have a coach that we work with, Daniel Alexa, and his motto is he coaches dead people. And so when you talk about when you feel dead inside, you have no drive, no thrive for life at all. That to me is the walking dead, and that's what Daniel focuses on is people who have reached that point where they feel completely hopeless, and so they're basically walking dead people. And there is a way out from that too. It might not feel like it, but if you've gotten to that point where you're just that low, then you want to work with somebody that's working at that level that can help you up level, right? And then you get to that level and you up level, and you get to that level and you up level. Then there is no end to that, right? So it's not complete hopelessness if you've been involved with a narcissist. It's simply the ability to recognize what you're up against and recognize that person, until they take responsibility for themselves, isn't going to, there's no amount of effort you can do over here that would affect them over there, right?
One of the lowest levels of consciousness is apathy. And at the level of apathy, you have no energy. You can't respond. And it's not to say, but you must respond. But if there's no energy to respond, then there is no energy. What you need is that injection of energy from a higher place, from a place of acceptance. And that you only get from a severe wake up. That's all I can say. From a place that actually like breaks that level of apathy and just rips it open, so that you can, then you can see, okay, there is energy, there is a possibility, there is a way. And even what I've seen is people get really angry when you're apathetic. You can't even get angry. But when you then really get angry, it lifts you out of that lower levels of consciousness, and then suddenly something can happen, because now there's energy, even if it is anger. Of course, you have to guide that and not let it become violent. But when you get to that, it actually gives you like a little bit of a runway, and that is the way that, as I began to understand it, it is where you begin to get the escape velocity. When you really start lifting your own consciousness and allow that, then you begin to get to that escape velocity. You get momentum, and then you can escape through courage, which is like on the levels of consciousness. And when you can get to that level of courage, then the whole higher consciousness opens up for you, and you can move in there.
I like the idea of anger being a runway, not a highway, right? Exactly. You only want to stay on it short term. Anger is meant to get you launched, not to drive on, right? It gets a little bumpy long term.
You're going to run into a truck.
Well, so when we talk of the journeys, we go through that journey of acceptance, like it is what it is, and then you move into gratitude, and you start to see your world of what remains and what's possible. You really start to explore the good. I mean, in your situation, you have tangible things that were historical and valuable that were lost in this relationship, and there has to be a mourning. Right. We shared the video back and forth of the Vikings where they mourned and paid homage to their dead. Right.
Yeah.
They would have a ritual and a ceremony to celebrate the life of the person, or, we all do it. But to sit down and pay homage to and have ceremony for the loss, right? Can you speak about what that might do for somebody and the expressions of gratitude and how that might impact somebody's healing?
Yeah. When I did my burial process, I can just call it that. It is a process of saying, yes, that has happened, and yes, there were good things, yes, there were awesome things, and yes, it's time for that ship to burn, and let it burn. And then it's a sense of freedom that comes from that, to say, now I can go back to me. Now I can go back, because there is me that used to be, that was quite powerful and clever and, funny and all those kind of things. That person is still there. When this boat has sailed, that boat is gone. Now I remain, and now I can start living again. It's like a resurrection, really, of who you are when you've had the funeral, kind of the process of that goes. I am here, and I am still enough. I am still the same person from before this relationship.
Yeah, Angie Barnett, she was amputee. She was on our show. If you haven't seen her show, that's one to go back and watch. But she lost her leg in an amputation in a skiing accident. And she had a ceremony and a burial for her leg. And they did it just like a family member had died. And she talks about being homesick for her leg, right? But she had that closure, the ceremony of the leg being gone, and now she's able to rebuild where she's at. It is what it is. That leg's not coming back, but she's able to move forward in a new way, right? In a powerful way. Even though a piece of her is missing, literally, she's able to rebuild her life and create it in a new way. And that's what I think paying homage to our losses does, is it creates a space of closure. Like we are acknowledging and recognizing that we had a loss, and we're grieving it, and we're sad about it, and then we're also recognizing the good that came from that experience, and then rebuilding our lives, right?
Because the essence of who you are, or who you were before this experience, is still there. So for me is to, what I'm helping people do now is to go back and to find that person. Go and find the best of that person and remind them, put it back, put it back into their remembrance, and say, okay, this is who I was, this is who I still am, and I'm still allowed to be that person. And forgiving myself, like Amanda said, forgiving myself for not bringing that forward into this relationship.
Or if there wasn't a lot of good too, I just had this thought too, if there wasn't a lot of good in that relationship, you can't think of much good. Think of all the good that can now come into your life, and that was maybe before. So either a remembrance or, what can come into the future.
And also being in a situation to say that the good that came about from that happening. Because it's like the weirdest thing to say, it was a bad experience, but after that, what benefit is there in that happening? Now different things can happen.
Gratitude, right? This is what Amy's saying here is, thank you, Mom, for going through those experiences.
My mom, before she passed, she said something that I thought was profound and powerful. And she had her mental challenges, which were pretty severe. But she said, you can blame people, or you can credit people, right? And there's a difference between blaming and credit. Credit seems to be a thing where you actually learn and grow from, whereas blaming holds you down. Blaming puts you in a space of I don't have a say. And as much as my mom's behaviors were tough, they were generational too. They go back in time. Her dad and her mom, and then their history. It's amazing how much it can be passed down. And so to recognize where it comes from, you can credit it. Just like at the end of a movie, you have all these credits. But it doesn't mean that there's no movement forward from there. It's just simply a recognition of where it came from. And an opportunity for growth.
Yeah, and if you go into the blame, if you look at the whole levels of consciousness, before you can blame someone, you have to go down into that state of consciousness where that language is possible, where that energy is possible for you to do that. When you thank someone or credit them for whatever they've done well, that immediately takes you up to much higher level of consciousness of acceptance. So from there you can create. When you're down there in blame and shame and the whole thing, and you want to blame and want to shame that person, at the end of the day, you're just shaming yourself, because before I can go and blame someone, I have to descend into that level of consciousness where that is possible.
Yeah. Man, I love this. I see the thread, and I'm looking for it, obviously, but the thread of the 12 journeys through what you're teaching here. Now that you get into a space of gratitude and learning from the experience, then you go into uncertainty, an unknown future. You start looking around you, you start seeing the abundance of the world again. You start seeing the abundance of yourself again. You start re-envisioning your world. And sometimes you go back in time to envision who you were to create who you will be. And so you just go back and you restart from where you are. And then you go into surrender and nurture and letting go and letting it play out in a new way. And then you see at the end of it, the legacy that ties it all together, your why for doing it. Like, why are you doing all this? Right.
Yeah. And as you get to the higher level, the one of the higher levels of consciousness is willingness. And when you are willing to create, then providence shows up in an amazing way. I mean, you start manifesting stuff shows up in your life that's like, holy crap, this is awesome. And those are the kind of things that just show up. Like where I'm sitting now, this showed up. A friend said, you can come and work here, and this is a very nice place. It's a total change of environment. It's like, whoa, man. And things start manifesting around you. It's like, well, the magic is back. And believe me, you can still go down into blame and shame. It's available, but you can choose to, okay, I am willing. The thing that I have learned to do, on the spiritual journey, is to say, I am willing, show me. And then the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, shows you. And then the thing is just to do that thing. When it shows you, do it. Because it is most often it's quite effortless. That's a fantastic. Where you used to grind yourself to pulp while you were down there, trying to please and trying to be the kind of awesome person that you're supposed to be and never succeeding. Now you are in willingness, now you are in acceptance, and then the joy and the peace starts coming through. And then you can actually sit in wherever you are and be peaceful. That's where you escape Narcatraz.
There's a quote that says, the harder you work, the harder it is to surrender.
Exactly. Yeah.
And one thing I noticed when you're doing your work, when you were releasing the things that were lost in your last relationship, immediately you started having stuff come into your space that you weren't expecting.
Exactly.
It was amazing, including the room that you're in right now. I feel attacked. Yeah. Well, and somebody mentioned, I think it was Mancherry mentioned the word forgiveness, and my understanding, my favorite definition of forgiveness is to not cause additional harm. Enough harm has been caused already in the relationship. So for you to damage yourself more because of being in that relationship is just causing additional harm. So forgiveness in my world is to not cause yourself additional harm by trying to get even with that person, but trying to cause additional harm to them, because they're not going to be affected no matter what you do. So all you're doing is you're hurting yourself. And so I would see forgiveness as a letting go of whatever it was, to receive it like that is what it is. I receive it willingly, and I'm not going to go out and cause additional harm to myself or others. And I'm going to move on. I'm going to rebuild with what I've got.
Yeah, and that's like a statement of of willingness to say, I'm willing, let this go.
Yeah.
I'm willing, show me,
Yeah.
let
I like that.
let us do this. And then it starts showing up, and it's fast. I mean, it's really fast. When you actually get to that point, it takes a while to get there, of course, because there's this thing that's still keeping, working overtime at times. But then when you get to that surrender and say, okay, fine, honestly, what I do with some of the people that I work with, I take them on this little consciousness journey. It's like I call it the Light Express, and I get to this point where they can stand and look up and say, I surrender, I allow this, I accept this, and I'm willing, show me. And then things start showing up in their lives. It's like boom, and they say,
Amazing.
what is this? It says that is divine presence. That's peace coming
I
down into your being that will lift you out of that Narcatraz
don't know who
and give
said
you
it,
a
but
new foundation.
there's a quote, and I'll paraphrase it, that you're no longer a prisoner in paradise.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. Yeah.
Which I think ties in.
That's very appropriate.
If we looked at your legacy and the reason why you're doing all this, what is your hope that you can create with what you're creating with Escape from Narcatraz?
Okay. The big thing is to help people to create that my life 2.0 experience, where they are not citizens or on parole from Narcatraz. Because if you try and get out of it and you do not surrender and you don't get to higher consciousness, in other words, become the person who can create from that higher level the place of peace. If you don't go there, you're just on parole. And next time you go into a relationship, you probably 99% of the time you're going to end up with another narcissistic person, because you haven't healed enough to actually ascend. I know they call ascending as a whole thing.
Yeah,
but
I get what you
because
mean.
you transcend the levels of consciousness, you don't fight your way up.
Yeah.
It is surrendering to the peace and the joy. And by doing that, you can let go of all the blame and the shame and the guilt and all those kind of things. It's still available, but then you can choose and say, I choose, and I make myself available for divine intervention. That's really how I experience it. Yeah.
Beautiful.
And
Ryan, do you have some other thoughts around that?
I see others that are going through this journey. I've been through some of this journey. It can be very draining, but the freedom that comes on the other side of it, the peace, the creation that then can occur afterwards. Oh my gosh, it's just it's neat to see that, and it's nice to know that there's people out there. Amanda's one, you're one, Adriann, where you're out there helping others to become conscious and aware, and then gracefully and lovingly coming in to help boost them up so that they can then take that responsibility and of just creating their lives how they want it to be created, and then recognize a narcissist and what they can do, and really I see a lot of it in their the healing in here will then like if you're not healed inside and or healing, you'll continue to attract those things into your life. Once you can start healing, it's almost like repelling those, or you can be aware of it and it doesn't come in like that anymore.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I love sitting here smiling and loving him. There's so many comments. I got to go back now too, because there's been a bunch of comments, but a lot of us have been through this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
some of us don't know what to do. So having people like you in the world that are going, look, I've been through this. Here's what you do. Here's what I did, and I can help you. That's amazing to me.
Yes. And the thing is of the My Life 2.0 part is where you become like invisible to the average narcissist, because I know that they will not go for a person who is immune to them, who sees them, who understands, I can see you, I know you.
Yeah.
And it's not accusatory or anything. It's just, I can see you now. and they can see that you see them, and then they stay away from you.
Yeah.
It's like, there's 12 disciplines of the mind. And if you get to those, if you can start working with those 12 disciplines of the mind, you can develop a thing that I just call it a divine indifference to these people.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, it's a fact that they don't change. They do not change. So becoming indifferent is not a bad thing. Becoming unassailable, that's the main thing.
Yeah.
So that you cannot do a conscious creation from a place of peace while you're trying to do battle with a narcissistic person.
You say unassailable. Amanda Monk says unfuckwithable.
that too, yes. Yeah.
As we wrap up here, if you were to go back in time before all this occurred and share a piece of wisdom with yourself that would carry you through, what would you share?
Okay. Basically, if you go back to yourself before this experience that you're going through, you are still that person. You are still everything that is there, that might be covered up, might have been invaded, that might have been colonized by someone else. You're still that person. Let's go and find that person, bring that person back to life, and start building up on that person. Yes, this happened. All this happened. You can't deny it. You have to make peace with the fact that it did happen, but that person is still there. So let's go and find him or her and rebuild her and re-energize that person and allow divine grace and peace and joy to come back, flooding back into your life. And then you will experience the miracle of My Life 2.0, where you create from a place of peace, where you're not in a constant battle trying to please anybody. And when you get there, your codependency will disappear because you will understand exactly who you are.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. How do people get in touch with you if they want to have a conversation with you, they want to work with you? What's the best way for them to reach you?
Oh, well, they can send me a messenger. I'm on Facebook, loud and proud there. So yeah, they can message me there. And if they want to start talking, I'm quite willing to serve and ready to break open that gate. By the way, the gates of Narcatraz are open. We just don't think so.
Yeah,
they are open.
You so can just walk right out anytime.
You
right?
need to walk out. Yeah.
Beautiful. Ryan, any additional thoughts?
I'm again, gratitude for the people that are out there that are doing their work and seeing, these things and if you're just realizing it, that you're going through this stuff, that there's people out there that will love the freaking crap out of you, that they see the giant that's inside of you. They see who you really are and who you can be. Surround yourself with those people, because they'll help buoy you up and remind you and help you to see what you're not seeing. And when you're feeling all the feels and going through the tough stuff, that those people are there to lift you up. So find those people. We're here if you need. Reach out. Adriann, thank you so much. Even with the power outage and
it just went
the
off
lack
now.
of peanut butter, we made it through.
That's perfect timing. Yeah,
exactly. Yes.
As we wrap up here, reach out to Adriann if you need to have that conversation. He's powerful at what he does because he's been there. I think that really affects things. When you've been through the journeys on your own, you have a different understanding of it. It's not textbook style. This is from real world experiences. So reach out to him. One thing we always say is, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. You're right on time. The beauty of waking up is that even though it feels like you've missed out, you haven't, because it's never too late to wake up. And as soon as you wake up, the universe has this way of making up time. Exactly. It's interesting. But it takes you waking up for that to happen. And so being okay with where you are is one of the biggest steps. Is you're actually doing better than you think. And man, I see a lot of people really hard on themselves about where they are and what they've been through. And if you could step back and see you the way that we could see you, you would realize how well you're doing. And you would be a little more lenient on yourself. And it's not that you're giving up. It's just simply recognizing, man, I've come a long way to get to where I am. So honor that. Yeah. Pay homage. Yeah. homage to what's lost, step back in. Adriann, any other thoughts before we wrap up?
Not really. I could keep you for another 3 hours, but yeah.
We'll have to have 2.0.
Yeah. The nice thing about this is when you talk to someone and they say, you get me, I understand you, and that is for the victim or the Narcatrazian. That is one of the most important things, is you understand me. Nobody else understands me. You actually understand. Thank you so much for understanding me, because nobody else believes them. And that's it. That's one of the biggest breakthroughs I see that happens to people.
That's beautiful.
But thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed this experience, and truly, I hope this helps so many people, because there's a lot of them. This narcissism is a massive thing all over the world, and it's not just personal relationships; it's relationships in work, family, and since the pandemic thing, it has actually escalated tremendously. And so there's a lot of hurting people, and you don't have to hurt for the rest of your life, my friend. You don't have to.
Beautiful.
Amazing.
Beautiful way to end the show. Thanks for watching, guys. We will see you on the next episode. Make it a giant day.
Love you too.